This is the new GX12 from Radiomaster, and take a good look at this radio because what you're seeing here is the peak, the pinnacle, the ultimate FPV radio. Not only is it an EdgeTX ExpressLRS based radio, it is a Gemini X capable radio with a 1 watt dual band Gemini X module on board. It features an OLED display, full CNC Hall effect gimbals, and fully customizable switches and buttons. On top of all of that, there are so many little nice features, and it is even customizable, allowing the user to replace the switch panels on the top or even install their own external antennas. And what's even more incredible than that is that you're getting all of this for just $169. This radio really is it. And today we're going to do a deep dive into the radio's features and capabilities. And then at the very end, I'm going to share with you my thoughts. Now, just before we get into this one, I do need to be crystal clear in saying that Radiomaster did send me over the GX12 for free to review. However, they have not paid me to make this video. They've not sponsored this video. They've not seen this video. And as always, my thoughts are entirely my own. Okay, now to walk you around the GX12 in a lot more detail. Now, as I've said, this is a fully featured EdgeTX ExpressLRS radio. It is a different layout to the likes of the Boxer. Rather than the screen be at the bottom, the screen is now at the top, although it is a similar footprint to the Boxer, but we will compare that in a bit more detail later on. Now, the screen on this, as I've said, is an OLED display. It has a resolution of 128 by 64. It's not the highest resolution, but because it's OLED, it's going to give you a great view in sunlight. The radio comes fitted as standard with full metal CNC gimbals. Now, these are not the AG01s. These are what they are calling the GX01. They are still full metal CNC. They are still Hall effect, and they are capable of up to 1000 Hertz output. An interesting difference between these new GX01 gimbals and the likes of the AG01 is the fact that Radiomaster have moved the Hall sensors from being part of the gimbal onto the PCB. There's now a single Hall sensor below each gimbal, and what you have then is a magnet in the bottom of the stick that the Hall sensor picks up. This is basically the same design that we've seen from other manufacturers, but what it has done is allowed Radiomaster to shrink the depth of this gimbal, allowing for a slightly more compact setup. Another really nice feature on these gimbals is the fact that they come with folding sticks as standard. So for instance, if you give the stick end a pull, you can actually fold the gimbal stick over for transportation, that way giving it a much smaller overall vertical footprint, and you're not going to risk damaging these in transit. Now, these gimbals are adjustable. You can adjust them here on the front, and there are also adjustments for these under the battery bay door at the back here as well. So for instance, if I just pop that out, you can see that there is an adjustment there as well, and we've also got a little panel up there which allows the adjustment on the other ones. Now, even though the stick ends do fold, they are fully adjustable. They are simply threaded with 2 separate nuts, just like we find on previous radios, and then you just lock the 2 nuts up against each other. Now, the ends they include are very nice. They are very similar to the sticky ends that Radiomaster used to have in the past. They have little spikes on the top, and then you have spikes all the way around. They're certainly not too sharp, but they offer a real nice amount of grip, and paired up with the CNC gimbals, they are absolutely solid. These feel as good as the AG01s out there all day long. I think it's just a different design gimbal, hence the name difference, GX01, but absolutely no complaints with these whatsoever. Now, looking around, it has all of the usual features and capabilities that you would expect to find. Operating system wise, it has the usual EdgeTX features. I'm not going to spend too much time on that, but if I go into the model menu, you can see you have all the usual options. We've got our buttons at the side here, buttons down here, and our roller wheel here. The buttons are plastic on this radio, but the roller wheel is CNC aluminium, and you have all of the controls that are available as you'd expect to find in EdgeTX. One nice feature on this radio as a result of that EdgeTX operating system and the design Radiomaster have used is, alongside our normal switches and buttons, which we'll take a look at in a minute, our buttons along the bottom here are fully customizable. You can control these in the software. So if we go across to our page, and down here you've got your customizable switches option, and this allows you to program these into whatever you want them to do. So for instance, you can have each of the 6 buttons set to control one output in 6 different positions, but you can each set these independently if you want to. You can set each one to its own switch, or you can group them up to have 2 3-position switches or 3 2-position switches with these buttons if you wanted to. What's also nice on these is that you can also set different colors for the switches as well. So for instance, I currently got number 1 programmed as a single toggle switch, and you can see it's going between green and blue. We've got number 2 and 3 set up as a 2-position switch, and number 4, 5 and 6 set up as a 3-position switch. You have all of the options available for this under the model setup, under customizable switches, and you can even change the colors here for each switch. So for instance, I can change the on this to any color I want to. So we've got on, we can set to pink. So if I now press it, you can see it goes pink, then it goes back to blue, and it's fully customizable for each of these switches down here. Now below these, we've got 2 potentiometers on the front, and then there are also 2 momentary buttons on the shoulders, 1 on each side. Now these are non-latching, although you can set these to be latching buttons with the logical switch function in HTX if you wanted to. Moving up to the top, we then have our toggle switches and some more buttons. So we have 2 3-position switches at the back, 2 3-position switches at the front. There are 2 momentary buttons on the corner. Again, these are non-latching momentary, but you could make them latching with the software switches option if you wanted to under the logical switches. And then you have another 2 potentiometers on the top as well, giving you a total of 4 pots. Now, if this configuration doesn't suit you, you can swap out these panels, because Radiomaster have included some additional plastic panels that allows you to remove the potentiometer here, and they've also included some different switches as well. So if you wanted to swap this out for a 2-position switch, you can have that. They include one here, and they also include a momentary switch here as well. If you do swap these panels out, you retain the push button and you lose the potentiometer, but you can change these switches if you wanted to into a different configuration, so a 2-position latching or a 2-position momentary. So for me, I'm probably going to swap this switch out for the 2-position latching. That way I can have my arm switch there on the corner, and then you can retain these push buttons. As I've said, they are momentary, but you can set them to be latching if you want to in the software. Now, with regards to customization, there's one last thing I just want to mention. These top 2 corner shoulder buttons are currently momentary buttons, and they're not latching in the software. As I said, you can use the logical switches function to turn them into latching buttons. However, there's a plan in the future releases of HTX to allow you to customize these buttons here, just like you can customize these ones down here. Not only change the LED color, but also make them latching as well in the software. That is something that's going to become available in the future with an HTX update. At the moment, they're simply momentary. If you do need that functionality, you can do it with the logical switches, but it's going to come into that customizable buttons feature, just like these options down there. Now, alongside all of that customization, the major selling point of this radio is obviously the fact that it comes with that ExpressLRS Gemini X module installed from the factory as standard. Now, it is really amazing to see that built into this as standard. Again, capable of up to 1 watt of RF output. You can fully configure that via the ExpressLRS Lua script. If you want a lot more information on how Gemini X works, I do talk about it in my review for the Nomad module. There will be a link to that in the description, but there are lots of different bands and options available. You can choose the different packet rates, which allows you to set the bands as well. So for instance, at the moment, I've got it set to manual output on antenna 1. And if we go into this up to the top, you can see we've got the 200 low band, we've got the 100 low band, we've got then the 50 low band, And then we got 500 2.4, 333 2.4, 250 2.4, 150 2.4, 100 full 2.4, 50 2.4, and then you've got the Gemini X modes, which is X150, X100 full resolution switches, and then 250 low band, 200 low band. You got then the DK modes and all of the options up to K1000 as is available on this module. And again, it's just great to see that built in as standard. Now, antenna wise, this radio does have two built-in fully articulating dual band antennas as standard. These are fully foldable, both dual band. You can move them to horizontal, you can move them to vertical, but don't worry if you don't want to use these, because Radiomaster have included in the back of the radio here blank spots. So if you pull these out, you will need to install the SMA antenna connections yourself, but you could install external antennas on this radio if you wanted to. Now, alongside that, with the built-in module, there is also a module bay on this radio as well. It is a nano bay, and that is available there. So if you did want to put an external module on there, if you still had some crossfire stuff, you can use it. You can plug that onto the back and use it as normal. There's also nice cooling built into this for the ExpressLRS Module 2. You can see the heatsink down there. There'll be a fan inside pushing that out the top, and we'll take a look at that a bit more later on when we tear the radio down. It's nice to see not only have they included that Gemini X module, but you've still got the module bay. Again, just giving you all of the options that you would ever need. Now, as I've said, I'm not going to go into great depth in this video with regards to what Gemini and Gemini X is. However, the basics are this radio has two modules, each of them capable of transmitting on either the low band, which is 868-900, or the high band, which is 2.4 gigs. Each of these can be individually configured, or you can set them into Gemini X mode, which uses both modules at the same time, one transmitting on low band 868-900 and one transmitting on high band. This is possible because of the new LR1121 chipset that we originally saw in the Nomad module, which has now been added into this radio as well. And as I've said already, we have a module built in with two LR1121s that give it the full crossband capability. As you can see here on this chart, you can see the compatibility on the modes. It is the same on the GX12 as it is for the Nomad. So again, you can see you have all of the LoRa modes available up there. You have the FSK modes available as well. You also have, though, the Gemini modes available as well, which allow you to transmit on the same band but on two different frequencies within the band. So for instance, Gemini would allow you to put both modules on 2.4 gigs. One module would transmit on one frequency and one module would transmit on another frequency within the 2.4 gigs band. And what this does is give you additional redundancy without the latency penalty that we saw in the D modes, or what was called the deja vu modes. Gemini and Gemini X give you the best of everything, and you can choose exactly what you want this radio to do with the configuration available in the ExpressLRS Lua, and it really does make it a one for all. If you're flying wings, you can stick in your low band receivers. If you're flying quads and you want high rates, you can stick in your 2.4 gigs, and you don't have to mess around with lots of different modules. Now, alongside all of that, there's a couple of other little touches I just want to mention. We've got a power button in the middle, which is obviously illuminated, but you'll also notice down here these buttons are illuminated, as are these. These, though, are adjustable with regards to the color. You can set that in the menu as well, although these are all fixed. Now, with regards to the connectivity, if we look on the top of the radio, you will find our I/O at the top here. This radio has a single USB port, so there isn't a dual port on this like you find on the Boxer. This port does both the charging as well as the I/O connectivity for Edge TX. As I mentioned, this radio doesn't have an SD card. Instead, there's 512 of onboard storage, which is built in, and you would access that via that port too. Then alongside there, we've got headphones and DSC port, and then on the back we've got our nano module bay, as I showed earlier. They do include this carry strap as standard, like we've seen on the Boxer, and that's bolted in place there and there, nice and strong. And then in the middle we have our battery bay door. Now, there is no battery included with this radio as standard. I've got in here at the moment the Radiomaster 5000 mAh pack. Unfortunately, this radio won't take the 6200 that does fit in the Boxer, but it will take this one, but this isn't included. You get an 18650 holder as standard with the radio, so you're going to need your own batteries, but you could upgrade to the 5000 if you wanted to. Also in the bay, there is a reset button there, and obviously we've got a power input, but there's no SD card slot here because of that onboard storage. Now, the last thing really to show you on the back of the radio is the grips. It is the same rubber grips that you find on the likes of the Boxer. If I just peel this out, under there, you do have some additional adjustments for the gimbals. So whilst there are adjustments on the front, you do have the tension adjustments there, and in there you have the other limit adjustments available in there too. Now, the next thing we're going to do is compare the GX12 to a couple of other radios with regards to size. Now, in that, we'll take a look at it compared to a Boxer, TX16 and Zorro, although I don't look at the pocket there. I'll put it there for the pocket now. It's a bigger radio, but it isn't actually that much bigger considering what you get extra with it, but it's certainly not in the same class as the pocket. Looking at it compared to the Boxer, first of all, now this is the radio I think it's in the same size class as. Whilst it is a little bit shorter, it's the same width, and it is a little bit deeper. If you're happy carrying a Boxer, you'll be happy carrying this radio. It isn't dramatically smaller, but you can see there is a bit of a difference there. Now, when it comes to the gimbals, you will also note that the full-size AG01s on this do look bigger than the gimbals on this, although I think the throw is very, very similar. I have done some tests with a vernier caliper, and it's coming out about the same. I'm not going to say it's absolutely identical, but I don't think there's a great difference in the throw between these new GX01 gimbals and the AG01s. What you'll notice more than anything is it's a more basic gimbal in the sense of you don't have all of this nice machining around the edge, all of the bling around it. It's a more straightforward looking gimbal, but it is full metal, full Hall effect, 1000 hertz, so it's giving you all of the great benefits. You just don't quite have the same bling as you get on the AG01s. Now, just showing it compared to the Zorro, again, this radio isn't as small as everyone thinks. It's a gamepad style radio, but it does take up a lot of space. It's actually taller. If I pop it over the top, you will see that it is a taller radio, but it is a little bit narrower. This radio is fitted with the AG01 minis, so you can see those gimbals are a bit smaller. They're not quite as big as the GX01s, and again, these do have a bit of a smaller throw, but it's not dramatic, the difference between all three of the different gimbal types. What's nice to see, though, is that you are getting them included with this radio as standard. Now, finally, just comparing it to a TX16S, I don't have a blinged out one of them, I just have a standard one, and you can see it's a shockingly smaller radio. Okay, the screen is much bigger on this. The overall package on this, though, is much, much smaller. The TX16S is a great radio, but it's overall too big for me. I like compact radios. I like this size class, and I'm going to be honest, this for me now is basically feeling like the perfect radio. It has a couple of the things that annoy me about the Boxer fixed, and they were minimal if I'm honest with you. And package wise, it's going to fit really nicely into the bag. But as I said earlier already, size wise, if you were happy with the Boxer, you'll be happy with this. If you're happy with this, you'll certainly be happy with this. But more than anything, it's this size class of radio that it falls into. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is have a quick look at how we change these corner pieces, and then we're going to do the bit that everyone likes, which is tear the radio apart. Now, as I've said, these corner panels are swappable. There are 2 screws on each one, and they have a module set up. I've had a quick look at one of them already, and what happens is all of the functionality on them is connected to a module, so it's just 2 screws. You can lift this whole thing out. Let me just get the screws out of the way so we don't risk losing them, because we're going to need to make sure we've got them to put back in. There we go. And then you can see this whole module has come out. What we have is our switches going onto the module. It's got a potentiometer on there, and it's got our front push button on there as well. This module just unplugs like that. It's got a single large connector, and then you've got the whole module there. If you wanted to swap this over for the other one, so let me just figure out which one I've got where. It's not that one. It will be that one, I think. Is that right? No. It's that one. If we wanted to swap them over, so what you would do is swap that board over to here. Still got the same mounting points, but you would leave off the potentiometer. So the potentiometer would still be inside, but you would leave the lever off it, and that way then it's not connected. But it comes out as a single module, and then that just leaves that big hole in the top of the radio. So again, we'll do the same on this side here. Pop that one out. Same setup, exactly. Just unplug the cables and we can pop them off like that. Now, there are no screws on the front of this radio to take it apart, but there are some on the back. If we take off the rubber grips on each side, we will pop off the battery cover and take the battery out, because you should always make sure you've disconnected the battery. And then that reveals some screws here, 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 here. And that appears to be it. Are there any under the antennas? Aha! There are 2 located there. So we're going to just undo these 4 first of all. And this will then allow us to get inside. And there's something I want to show you that Radiomaster also talk about in their spec, which is something new, actually, something we haven't seen before. And it's quite interesting that they're mentioning it. So we will discuss that as we get in as well. Okay, so that's those 6 screws removed. 2 there, 4 down the sides. They're still in the plastic, but then that looks like the back will hinge up. Now, the reason it's grabbing on this bottom corner is because I have a little warranty sticker here. There is a cable that goes between the back and the front, so we do need to be careful of him. Let's just pop him off. There we go. That should then allow me to get the warranty void sticker off. Sorry, Radiomaster. Let's just get that one out of the way. And that then reveals the inside. Now, that thing that I was talking about that Radiomaster say is that this radio is designed with slightly thicker plastics, but also that the PCB has a hydrophobic coating on board. Now, I can't see at this point that there's much difference. I can see some signs of coating there, but what they're saying is that there is a hydrophobic coating on this to help prevent the damage of water ingress, moisture, allowing it to be used in more extreme conditions than some of their previous radios. Now, looking around inside, we can see that there's 2 PCBs. It's sort of a single base PCB design. We've got the main bottom board around here and here and here. And then we've got that ExpressLRS module here, which is basically the Nomad module. Now, you can see that there's also some buttons as well as some connections on that. So there's a connection on that goes down to there. We can see our antenna connections glued on there under this big heatsink. What you've got is a fan which is drawing air from inside the radio, venting it out, and then that's going to be vented out that hole at the top of the radio over there. So it's got a really nice cooling solution on this. And then you can see our antenna connections going off down there, heading off into that part of the radio. Now, looking around, we had a connection over here to the back. That is for our nano bay. There's nothing else on that at all. It's just a pin header over to the connection for the nano bay. But there are a few other connections located around the board. So we've got what looks to be a clock signal, a DID, a ground and 3.3 volt. There's another one there, or it's the same one pinned out. So they're calling that Hall SDW there. We've then got a whole UART over here, which looks to also be pinned out. And then you've got an aux UART over here as well. Our wiring for our top board is up here and here. We can see that. That was our boards on either side to our buttons. And then everything else looks to be located underneath. You can see our CNC gimbals there coming through the back of the PCB. There's cutouts. Something interesting that I have just spotted, and this is a new one actually. I don't know if Radiomaster's done that before. If you look, it looks like the Hall sensors are on the PCB rather than in the gimbal itself. So they look like they've moved to a single Hall sensor design, and you can see the magnet there, and as I move it around, and then there looks to be a Hall sensor on either side of the board. Let's get it out a bit further and take a closer look at that. Okay, so I'm just undoing this ExpressLRS module. I've undone the screws. I'm just going to undo the cable here. There we go. And then lift that module off. We've still got the screws in it. I'm just going to get them out the way. There we go. There you can see the backside of that Express module PCB. They are labeling it. What are they calling it? X-band 1.3. So this is their internal X-band module. You can also see the little Wi-Fi antenna located down there as well on either side. So you've got two Wi-Fi antennas for the unit from the look of it. And then you've got your main RF output to our antennas there. I don't know how easy these are going to be to get off, because this panel looks like it's screwed. So it does look like I might have to undo the glue that is on the antenna connections. We'll have to go with that one. There we go. And then carefully do this side. It's better to rotate them first to loosen the glue up. There we go. So there's that ExpressLRS module. You can see that in a lot more detail now. We've got two Wi-Fi antennas. We've got some voltage regulation down the bottom here. You've got your RF chipsets under this shielding, which is all soldered in place. And then we've got our cooling on that side there, all looking really, really nice. Okay, so to continue the teardown, we now need to figure out what screws we do remove and what we don't. Now, what's interesting is if you look, they seem to show the screws you need to remove and the ones you don't, which is quite interesting. So that one, no. So let's remove the ones with the arrows, and then we'll see how we get on from there. Because I think some of these might be holding the gimbal in place. And then I think it's just these two. And then that might reveal, or at least allow us to remove the PCB. Definitely feels like that is moving. I'm just going to unplug these two down here. I don't know, is whatever's attached to them coming with it or not. So we're going to undo the speaker, whatever they're calling the coder, whatever that is. So we're going to undo them. Oh, we're definitely withdrawing the PCB with the gimbals on board. Oh, that's our power button falling off. Okay, that's fine. Right. So if you get this far, there is a cable that goes for the front to the display. It's not a ribbon cable. There's a ribbon cable at the front. So whilst you do need to be careful on it, it's not a super delicate ribbon. But what is interesting is as I withdraw that, all of the buttons are falling out. So there's the PCB. We'll come back to that in a second. Let me just pop that to the side. And then that leaves our speaker. So now we've got all of our light guides, our speaker. So that's our power button. And all of our other buttons have come in out of order. So I think it's those two, that one, and the lateral one. Okay, so there we go. Now you're going to need to go this far if you wanted to fit these SMA antenna connections behind the display. So this is how far you're going to have to tear down to do this. You've got those blanks, and then from the look of it, we've just got 2 screws. You can see that ribbon cable going across there under that plastic piece. So you're going to need to undo that from the look of it, and then all of this looks like it comes out as one piece. Let's just show you this for those who might want to do this in the future. There we go, that's the 2 screws free. Yeah, that whole top section is coming free. There we go. So there you can see the back of the display, and then there we've got our, let's just get this to undo. There we go, pop that screw in there, put that screw in there. So here we've then got our SMA antenna connections, your existing antenna connections there if you want to remove them or leave them. So that's where you'd be able to mount them if you wanted to do it. And then there is the back of that OLED display. You're going to want to be really careful with that, but it isn't too difficult to get to if you needed to. Okay, now looking at this side of the PCB. Now you can see there's definitely a coating on this. It looks heavier in some places than others, but it's definitely coated. You can see all of the buttons mounted along there, all of the buttons down there, everything for the control. We've got our rumble motor down there for our haptic feedback. We've got our potentiometers down there in the middle, and then we've got our trims there and there. Where's our other trim switches? That's interesting. Our other trims are actually on buttons. So some of them are fixed, some of them are not. Now here you can see that gimbal in a bit more detail. They are mounted to the PCB. And if I just show you in there, you can see that moving around. So it is a completely different setup on this compared to the AJ1s where you have the sensors as part of the gimbal. Instead, now the sensor is on the PCB. What we'll do is we will take one of these off. So that's what I'll do now, is I'll take this one off to show you, and then we can have a look at that hall sensor, which is going to be located about there. Okay, so I ended up actually doing this side rather than this side because that screw rounded and I couldn't get it off. They're held in with some locking compound and they're quite soft, so be very careful if you do need to get these off. I ended up changing to a different bit. However, we have undone this side, so if I now just give this one a bit of a pull, because all of the screws are out as far as I can tell, it should pop off. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, definitely looks like I've got the screws off. Still seems to be stuck to the PCB a minute, so I'm not sure. Definitely the screws are free. Okay, let's now just use a bit of gentle persuasion a second to try and see if we can release it. There we go, there's that one. There we go, sorted. They were just pressed into the board slightly. There we go. Now if we look at the gimbal first of all, you can see that there's a single magnet there in the middle. That is what you've got there. That moves around, so as I move the stick, that moves around, and then that's being interpreted by that hall sensor that is located there on the PCB. Again, you can see that hydrophobic coating over it. I'm not sure if this board is entirely coated in it or if it's just partly coated. This is a pre-production run as well, so obviously there might be slight changes. But yeah, you can see that hall sensor is right there. Just going in a bit closer, you can see the sensor there, and obviously it's picking up the movement in the magnet. Now on this PCB, we have our STM32F407. There looks to be an eMMC or a flash chip there, and there looks to be another one down there as well. Other than that, quite a difference in design from what we've seen before, but very good. As I've said, you can see that coating, that shines there. I don't know if this one's been fully coated because this is a pre-release, but they have said the ones from the factory will be. But yeah, overall, looking really, really good. Okay, so to share with you my thoughts on the GX12 from Radiomaster. Now, as I said at the start of this video, this radio costs $169. $169 for an HTX radio with an OLED display, full Hall effect CNC gimbals, 1-watt Gemini X module, and all of the little bells and whistles. I think it's incredible value, and I genuinely think Radiomaster have created the perfect FPV radio here. Whilst the layout might not be perfect for everyone, or the size, from a feature perspective, this is it. I really don't see any other radio being worth it over this. Everyone else may as well pick up their ball and go home. And the truth is, Radiomaster were already the best option, but now they are without doubt the best option again. What I really like about this radio is that they've addressed the complaints that we had in the Boxer. You know, the LCD display, we've now got an OLED. Yes, it's not colour, but most people don't need a colour touch display. This is perfect for FPV. They've improved these buttons along the bottom. They're now fully customisable, but they're also a lot more pronounced. You can feel them whilst wearing goggles. One of the complaints on the Boxer was you just couldn't feel the buttons unless you looked for them. And they've allowed customization on the top controls as well. This radio isn't perfect. I do have a few very minor complaints, and they are minor. One of them is these corner buttons. These two, I would have personally preferred either more toggle switches or latching button on the left hand side, at least like we had on the Boxer. I would have preferred a more bigger sort of arming button. I've swapped that switch out now for a 2 position that they include in the kit. So I've now got 1 2 position and 3 positions. That'll be enough for most people. Hopefully in the updates for HTX, these buttons here are going to be fully customizable as well. That isn't to say, though, you couldn't mount your own toggle switch on these buttons and do a bit of a modification inside. That is absolutely possible as well. I may even look at doing that myself on this radio. But really, other than that, that's about my only gripe. Everything else is just perfect. Now, about the only other things to mention is I have noticed that these bungs for the antennas can fall out. You just maybe want to put a little bit of silicone on them to stop them popping out. And as I showed earlier in the video, it's a bit of a shame that you can't get that big 6,200 milliamp hour battery in this radio, but you're going to be fine with those additional batteries that you can get, or the 18650s. You just can't get in a really large pack. Other than that, though, genuinely, this radio is it. And as I've said, it's incredible value for $169. Now, if you're interested in getting one, there will be a link to it in the description. That link will be an affiliate link to Radiomaster. Radiomaster are one of the only brands that I use affiliate links with, and that is because of the trust that I have built up with the brand. So if you're interested in getting one, the link is below, but you don't have to use it. You can go straight to Radiomaster's website and order it yourself, or your dealer, whatever you want to do. And finally, I just want to say a big thank you to Radiomaster for sending this over. If there's anything I haven't answered, if you have any questions, please do put them down below. I will try and answer them. If you'd like to support the channel to allow us to keep making content like this in the future, please also consider checking out the links to my Patreon as well as buy me a coffee. It is only through the support of my Patrons I'm able to keep making content on this channel. And if you'd like to support us to allow us to keep making content in the future, please check it out. I want to say a huge thank you to all of my Patreons. We would not be able to do this without your support. Anyway, that's it from me on this one. Look after yourselves, stay safe. I will speak to you soon.